used to call me Krazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What's the word on the street?
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Isn't that right, Mr. Poopy Pants?
We have so many questions that we want to ask you about the universe.
What the hell is wrong with me?
You guys ever been to Uranus?
Hi, this is Krazy Joe. I have a very special guest with me today. Since the day I started this podcast, there was one guest I always wanted to have on the show, and I'm very excited to say he's finally here with us. You may not know his name, but you certainly know his work. I have with me today Paul Fusco. He is the creator of Alf. He performed Alf on the TV show, and he created the show, was the producer of the show. Basically, he did it all. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you, Joe. Nice to be here. Why did we wait so long if I was your number one guest to be on the show?
I've been reaching out to you for years, and I kept coming up on dead ends. I would reach out to contacts that it said was your agents, and they'd say, we haven't represented him in years, and I just kept hitting dead ends.
Oh, that's unusual. Okay. Well, anyway, we're here.
I'm glad to have you.
Good. Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, what can you tell us? How did the character come about? It's my understanding that you created the character years before the show actually started.
Yeah, that's true. I was doing a bunch of specials for Showtime that were back when Showtime was just starting, and they had their own children's section, family entertainment section, and I did six holiday specials that were family oriented, that were revolved around puppets and fantasy characters. And out of the development of these shows, one of the shows was a Halloween show, and out of the development of the show, we had a shop. We were building these creatures and everything, and this weird looking thing that was a prototype like Alf, looked like Alf, and I kind of took a liking to the character, the look of it and everything, and I pulled it aside and kind of pondered what I was going to do with it, and just things happened, and I started to give it a personality, and little by little it sort of molded into what Alf was, and then I tried to come up with an explanation as to, okay, so I've got this weird looking character that talks like this, that's kind of annoying. What do I do with him? And it was he became in my mind, okay, the only way I could explain the way he looks is, let's say he's from space. He's an outer space visitor. And what's he doing here? Well, he crashed here. And then, you just sort of put the pieces together. And, I knew where I was going with him because I knew the character. And I figured, well, he's going to be the house guest that never leaves. He's going to be the man who came to dinner, Uncle Buck, all those things. And that's basically where it came from. And then I went out to L.A., and was working for Disney for a while on a couple of shows that they were doing for the new fledgling Disney network, Disney Channel. And I got an agent, and I was able to shop this idea around with the character. I had the character I would definitely bring Alf into the meeting so that they could meet him, and that's basically when we went to NBC. Brandon Tartikoff just took an entirely crazy take on him. He loved him, and that's really how it went. But if I didn't have him in the meeting with me, I don't think I would have ever sold the idea, because nobody knew what I was talking about.
So when you created the character came first, obviously, and you decided he was an alien. Then came the sitcom. Was the sitcom designed around the character, or did you know all along that he would be living with a family? And you mentioned the house guest that never left. So did that predate the show? You knew what the show would be before there was a show?
Yeah. Originally my idea was the family that he crashed into. It wasn't really a crashing into, but he was some scientist from NASA that tracked him, and it was going to be a guy from NASA that had a family that once they found out about this creature, they didn't know what to do with him, and they couldn't turn him over to the officials, to the government. So he took it upon himself to bring him into his home, and that's really where I was going with it. And I thought if I kept it within NASA, there could have been a few families, a few scientists that all knew about him that would really have to take turns rotating him because he's just such a pain in the neck. Nobody wanted to keep him there full time. But it just when I got hooked up with my co-producer, co-creator Tom Patchett, and once Tom got involved in it, things kind of changed and sort of morphed into the pilot that we ended up shooting. But basically, it was always intended that he would be put in a domestic Earth situation and comment on Earth and people and the world that we live in.
Well, that's a good segue then, because I wanted to ask you about the show's cancellation. Obviously, the show ended on a cliffhanger. You didn't know it was going to be a cliffhanger.
Right.
There have been rumors over the years. I don't think anyone knows what really happened because nobody was there, but the persistent rumor has been that the human cast found the show to be very slow-moving, and the rumor was always that
It was a horrible show to work for, and everybody was unhappy, and yes, that's a rumor. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody was dancing on air during the production of the show, because it was very hard work. The technical requirements back then to do a show like that were challenging, and it did take us 2 days to get a show in the can. But no, that is not the reason that the show was canceled. I mean, these people, the cast was paid really good money. There was no reason for them to be complaining. They probably had the career role of their careers in this show, so any speculation afterwards or sour grapes afterwards are certainly unfounded. I'll tell you the reason it got canceled, and the reason that we ended up on a cliffhanger was because NBC was not sure whether or not they were going to. By the way, when we went off the air, the show was still in the top 25 shows on TV. I mean, we're going back to now 1990. There were only 3 networks. I think Fox was just starting up, so you had your share of the audience was still pretty big, not like it is today with 790,000 channels. But Brandon Tartikoff was getting ready to step down, and what happened in the business world was prior to 1990, the networks were not able to own the TV shows that they ran. There was a antitrust law in effect that prohibited them from, because it would have been a monopoly, it prohibited them from owning whatever shows they produced. So basically, the networks gave producers money, they produced a TV show, the networks got to run it, and then the ownership of the shows always went back to the producers, the people who did the shows.
Right.
In 1990 or 1989, it all changed. They changed the antitrust laws, so now the networks were able to own their own programming, which was a big, big step forward for them. So what happened was NBC, and as did CBS and ABC, they formed their own production companies. And out of that came NBC Productions, and they started to develop their own shows. And one of the shows that they developed was a show called Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which they owned. And of course, it behooves them to put a show on the air that they own. They're not going to develop shows and not put their own shows on the air. So they developed this show, and it tested well, and it was a hit, and they had nowhere to put it. So it made sense for them from a business standpoint that you take off a show that you don't own to put on. They needed the time slot, basically. They needed the schedule, and that's why we got bumped. We got canceled. So the reason for the cliffhanger was we were told by NBC, because they were on the fence. They didn't know which shows they were going to take off the air to make room for the shows that they were producing. So we were told, look, we don't know if you guys are coming back for another season. If you don't, we will give you a 1-hour special to wrap up the cliffhanger, so that the audience won't be left on the edge of their seat, and you'll be able to tie up the package, and good luck, and we'll see you later. So that's how we left it. What happened after that was Brandon Tartikoff left NBC, and he went on to run Paramount Pictures, head of the motion picture division, and his successor was Warren Littlefield. And Warren Littlefield decided not to live up to the promise of his predecessor, and we were just left hanging, and that was it. We were just told afterwards that you're not coming back, and we're not going to let you do the special, and there you go. So then a few years later, ABC came to us and said, you guys never really wrapped that up. What's going on? And we kind of told them the story. So they gave us the order to do a made-for-TV movie called Project Alf, which we were hopefully going to show you what happened to Alf after he got captured by the alien task force. And it would have been Alf in the military, Alf being held, almost like a Guantanamo Bay type of thing. Alf,
right?
But he's got everybody under his finger, and he's going to become almost like a Sergeant Bilko. He's selling chocolates. He's got the PX concession. They all love him, but they just don't know what to do with it. And it was going to be if it was successful, or if they had the room for it, they were going to use it as a backdoor pilot. That's what they used to call it. It's so that if it was really well received, we would have gotten another series out of it, sort of a continuation of Alf's life after the Tanners. So that is it in a nutshell. That's the truth and nothing but the truth. So all those other rumors, I don't know. There's so many things out there that you read them and you say, "Oh God, where'd that come from?" But.
Well, if you don't mind my asking, what would season 5 have been had you come back? Would Alf have still been with the Tanners, but the world would know about him now?
No, the military would know about him, and the Tanners would have had visitation rights to him, or maybe on the weekends Alf would still go with the Tanners. But we needed what happened after 4 seasons of Alf being basically it was a recluse, and there weren't too many. We only opened the window to show Alf meeting new people very, very carefully because we didn't want to. It was a fine line of logic to say, he's being held captive here, but he's also being protected. We didn't after 4 years we sort of painted ourselves into a corner that there were just so many stories that you could use with a family. There's just so much trouble that Alf could get into in a household with one family. So by bringing him into the military and opening it up to that world, it would have opened up our story possibilities. We would have had more people for him to interact with and more possibilities of him to get into trouble. So it would have given us a little bit more leeway, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
The stories we were starting to do during the season, we were starting to do 2 or 3 dream sequences in the show, only because we wanted to show Alf in real life situations, but we didn't want to blow his cover, so we couldn't. So we would do a thing where he dreamt he was president of the United States, or he took over a company, or he met David Letterman, or whatever it is, and that's how we would open up the show. And it was very tempting because the writers were always pitching dream shows, say, because they would come in with Alf as President of the United States, Alf as F. Lee Bailey, Alf as, and of course we'd laugh and say that's hysterical, and I had to put the hammer down and say, look, we can only do 3 dream shows a year. That's it. We can't, it's like it's not that show. We have to keep it grounded and based in reality. But the easy thing was to come up with all these fantasy premises for Alf to be in. So anyway, we did our share of dream shows. That's for sure.
I actually was just watching the one the other day where he was president.
President, that's right. That's right. He's explaining, and you'd run it. You'd do something like that now, especially during an election year. You'd say, "Oh my God, this would be hysterical." Imagine Alf up there with Trump and all those people to be able to hear what he had to say. It's like he's just as funny today in today's contemporary times than he was in 1986.
Well, that was the brilliant thing about Alf, was that as an outsider to our society, he was able to be the commentator on our absurdities, and
that was what made it easy. That was the fun part about it, because you cut him a little slack. It was he could be outspoken, and you could couch it in the fact that, well, he didn't know better, or he could say something that was inappropriate, and you could couch it on, he's an alien. What do you want? So that's what made it really funny and workable. And he was always the one to address the elephant in the room. He was you wanted to know what he had to say, what he was thinking about, even though it wasn't right on, or it could have been a little bit skewed or whatever. But I remember there was a line from one of the shows where Alf's doing something really strange at the table or something, and with Brian, the kid there, and Willie walks in and he says something, and he just says, I really just don't understand you. And Alf turns to Brian and goes, "Tell him, Brian." And Brian turns to his father and goes, "He's an alien." So, we can get away with a lot with that. He's an alien.
Paul, we're at 15 minutes. Do you mind if I ask you about 4 more questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I've been rewatching the show with my 7-year-old, who loves it, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I recently got to the episode where Alf got the ventriloquist dummy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got questions for you about that episode. Here we have a man named Paul controlling a puppet who's controlling a puppet named Paul.
Uh-huh.
What was going on there? That seems like it was meta before the word meta was invented.
Oh, it was. I'll tell you something. The original script, that original episode, was so dark and creepy that we loved it. It was really, really funny. It was about Alf's alter ego coming out, and a lot of people had said, we remember the Twilight Zone episode. There were like 2 Twilight Zone episodes with a ventriloquist dummy, and people always found ventriloquist dummies creepy anyway. And then there was that movie Magic, with Anthony Hopkins, where the dummy, and then there was Chucky and all that kind of stuff. So we had a really, really funny script, and it was really, really dark, where Alf's persona really got into some creepy stuff. And I'm not saying, science fiction, scary stuff, but it was funny. And NBC was really, really worried that it might be too dark, that it would scare the kids. And our argument was, we never really created the show for kids anyway. It was an adult show. We never wrote the show for kids. We never, our sensibilities were, if it made us laugh, that's the show. That's what it was. Well, anyway, we sweetened it up a little bit, and we made it a little bit more saccharine and a little bit more, palatable for the family audience and everything like that. So, to answer your question, the Paul joke, the naming the dummy Paul, was obviously an inside joke from the writers, to say, because I think there's a line in there. When she explains to him how you work the dummy and what you have to do, and she says, well, first of all, you got to give him a funny name. Most of you, I'm going to call him Paul. Well, why are you going to call him Paul? Well, on Melmac, that's like the funniest name you can have, or something like that. And it was just like, okay. He said, oh yes. He said, no. He said, a Melmac Paul is the worst thing you can call somebody. It's almost as bad as calling them a son of a Paul. And then it became, so it was a joke on me, and that's basically where it came from. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun to do that because it was Alf again taking something and going so far with it that you said, oh my God, what can he possibly do wrong with a ventriloquist figure? And there you have it. So,
one thing I find, I was a huge fan of the show, still am, and when I talk about the show with people, I find that people who don't remember it quite as vividly as I do, they may not remember specific episodes, they may not remember episode details, but one thing that really sticks out in people's minds are the names you came up with for the characters. Names like Gordon Shumway, Wayne Schlegel, Mrs. Achmonic. Where did these names come? Did you know people in your real life with these names, or did you just make these up?
I think they did come from people that we did know, because they came from different people. Mrs. Achmonic came from, I think Tom Patchett had a next-door neighbor that actually his name was something like Achmonic, and he always thought that was a funny name, so that's where that came from. Wayne Schlegel, I think, was somebody that we knew. One of the writers knew somebody named Wayne Schlegel. So they were based on, you just like, you go through life and you hear a funny name, you put it back and you say, hey, I'm going to use that name someday. That's kind of funny. And a lot of times too, it was just because it was a funny sounding name, they'd come up with something.
Is there anything you always wanted to do with Alf that you never got the chance to do?
I would say probably a feature-length movie, which we are now working on. I think that the character deserves a shot at the big screen, seeing that there have been, in my opinion, lesser characters that have had a shot at the big screen.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think Alf would be a great family movie. I think it would give the character a chance to be explored by a new generation. and I know that the character works. The character is still as timely today as he was in 1986, 87, 88, because Alf is as current as the times.
Yes.
And it certainly is a crazier world today than it was back then, and he would certainly have more things to say and might be a little bit more bitter. I don't know, but so we are now in the process of developing a movie for Alf, and see how that goes.
Well, that was going to be my next question for you, actually. I wanted to ask about that movie. I don't know how much you can say yet, but again, going into the world of rumor, we're hearing that Alf might be computer animated instead of a puppet. Is there any truth to that?
Well, we don't know. Whatever he ends up being, he's going to look the same and not be different. There's a lot of technology that's available that we can do now that we couldn't do back then. But there's good computer animation and there's bad computer animation, and I certainly wouldn't want him to look any different than he did on the TV show. So, it might be a mixture of both. We don't know. When we get to that point, we will probably do tests and see what looks good and what doesn't look good, and go from there. So, that's just something we're open to. But by exploring the technology, it certainly would give Alf more freedom and be able to do more things. Again, it would have to look to our standards, and you wouldn't. The biggest compliment would be if you watched the movie, you wouldn't know how it was being done. You wouldn't know whether it was computer animated or a puppet or what. So that would be the true test, and I think it's possible. It's completely changing. I mean, every year the technology gets better and better and better. So,
do you envision a movie going back to the beginning and showing Alf crashing again, or would you try to pick it up sometime after the series?
We would probably want to pick it up later. I think it would do the movie, and it would do the TV show disservice to recreate it with new people. I think a couple of films have tried to do that, like Bewitched, and trying to remember, there's another one, but that's proven not to be a great idea because people are always comparing the new family with the old family, and you get into all kinds of controversy there. So
right.
I think we would pick it up at a later point.
Well, I want to thank you for doing this interview. We appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
Absolute truth, you were the first name when we started doing this show 5 years ago. I said I want Paul Fusco, and
well, as Alf would tell you, you have very good taste. So good luck with your show, and I'm sorry your partner wasn't able to join us, but well, what can I say?
Well, yeah, I just didn't want to hold you up.
I appreciate that. Well, again, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it, and thanks for being a fan. All right.
Thank you.
Keep wearing those pajamas with the plastic feet. Keep wearing those pajamas. Tell everyone you meet. Keep wearing those pajamas with the back door flap. Keep wearing those pajamas. Don't open, it's a trap. Oh no, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs, some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander pajamas, but no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now we're having fun. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now the song is done.